Are you taking full advantage of your workplace group benefits? Not everyone is lucky enough to have an employer that offers these. But for those lucky Canadians who have access to them, more than half of them are not cashing in the free stuff their employers are giving them. After working with clients over the past decade and seeing all kinds of work benefit plans, here are the top 9 things to know to make sure you're not leaving money on the table. Number 1 is the RRSP Matching programs. RRSP is the registered account you can use to reduce your taxable income. And in my experience, the work or group RSP is often the most overlooked piece. The work RSP is basically a piggy bank you can fill with money which you can then save or invest. And the amount you contribute into this account will give you a tax deduction, which lowers your taxable income by the same amount. So for example, if you have $120K of salary and you can contribute 5% into your work RSP, this means you contribute $6,000 into it. And so your taxable income is going to be lowered from $120K to $114K. This would give you an additional tax refund of $2,297. In other words, this $6,000 is generating 38.3% return for you in the form of a tax saving. And that's because you're in the 38.3% marginal tax bracket, assuming you're in BC. But that's not even the best part. With employer matching, when you put in $6,000, your employer will also put in another $6,000 into your account. This is literally free money your employer is offering you. And all you have to do to get it is to set up a work RSP account. Even before you pick any investments and have any investment growth inside the account, you're already doubling your money. This is hands down the best thing you can do to grow your wealth. A note here though is withdrawing money from your RSPs will trigger taxes. This is because any amount that you withdraw from your RSPs will become taxable income for that year. Now there are 2 exceptions to this rule. Number 1 is if you're using the money for your first home purchase. Then in this case you can withdraw up to $60K tax-free. And number 2 is if you're studying full-time in a post-secondary program. Then you can withdraw up to $20K tax-free. But when you're withdrawing money from your RSP tax-free under these 2 exceptions, you do need to gradually refill that RSP back up over the course of 15 or 10 years respectively. Number 2 is the Deferred Profit Sharing Plan, or DPSP for short. Remember we said the employer will match your contributions? Well, depending on your employer, their contributions may not go directly into the work RSP account. Instead, it'll go into a separate account called the DPSP account. It's basically the same thing as your work RSP, but with a few extra restrictions. First, there's the vesting schedule. Vesting is just a fancy term to mean that the employees will only get the full amount if they stay with their employer long enough. When you've stayed for a specified period of time, the amount inside will then become yours. And at that point, we say the amount is now vested. The second thing about the DPSP is that while most employers will allow you to transfer the work RSP money out to an external account like a personal RSP account with your bank, the DPSP always has some restrictions. So in most cases, you're not allowed to withdraw or you're not allowed to transfer out the amount unless you're leaving your employer. The third thing you need to know is TFSA Matching. If you're thinking, no way, I've heard of RSP matching before, but never have I heard of TFSA matching. Well, that's right, some employers do offer TFSA matching, but it is very rare. Most of the time, we only see RSP matching, but in some rare cases, some generous employers will also offer TFSA matching. So that's like double the free money for you. This is arguably better than the RSP because unlike RSP, there's no tax consequences when you withdraw the money. So it's a great way to invest your money for shorter or mid-term goals. That requires more flexibility. Keep in mind though that TFSA contributions do not give you a tax deduction like the RSP does. So there's no immediate tax saving. But investment inside the TFSA do grow tax-free, and you can withdraw the money tax-free as well. So make sure you're keeping tabs on all the different TFSA accounts you have, either through work or personally, so you're not going over the limit. The fourth thing to know is investment choices. When it comes to workplace benefit plans, the top 3 providers we see in Canada is Sun Life, Canada Life, and Manulife. These are all great companies, but when it comes to investment options available, the selection is often lacking, which could lead to underperformance. But this is not their fault. This is because the investment choices inside the group plans are only limited to what was predetermined by your employer and also the provider's group retirement services department. Let me explain what that means. For example, a client with a work RSP account in Sun Life could have maybe 5 to 15 different investment funds to choose from. But if they had set up a personal RSP account with Sun Life as well, then they could have full access to more than 60 different investment funds available. Now, more doesn't always equal better, but with more choices, you're more likely to find higher quality funds and be able to put together a portfolio with great diversification geographically and also across the sectors. This could make a huge difference in investment returns and how much money is in your bank account in the long run. And this leads me to an advice that I always give to clients, and that is while you should take advantage of the employer matching, it is super important to be mindful of how you're investing the money inside these plans. For example, with our clients, we always review its investment performance at least once a year and compare to what's available outside. And if you can achieve higher returns outside without taking on more risk, then you should do a direct transfer from your work RSP to your personal RSP for self-management. This type of transfer will not trigger any taxes and won't use up your RSP contribution room as well. But make sure you're doing this properly by completing the relevant forms to do a direct transfer instead of making a withdrawal. Because if you make this mistake, then the withdrawal can become fully taxable. The fifth thing you need to know is time horizon. Another common mistake people make with their work RSPs is not adjusting their risk tolerance based on the time horizon for the money inside. When it comes to investments, our risk tolerance depends on a number of factors, like your level of investment knowledge, your income and net worth, tolerance for short-term market drops or fluctuations, when you plan to use that money or the time horizon, and how much you plan to withdraw. For example, are you planning to withdraw a lump sum for a big purchase, or are you planning to withdraw a small amount each year to supplement your lifestyle? Only after considering all of these things can you decide which type of investment is suitable for you and how aggressive you can afford to be with your investments. But here's the point, with all other things being equal, the longer your time horizon is, the more you can afford to be more aggressive with your investments to achieve higher returns over the long term. Why, you might ask? Well, it's because over the long term, the stock market has consistently outperformed other types of investments, such as GICs, bonds, or even real estate. For example, the S&P 500, which is the benchmark for US stocks, has historically had positive returns over most 5-year periods. And when we look at 20-year periods, it has not even experienced one with negative returns. Now, many Canadians are saving into their work RSP for the purpose of retirement. So for a younger person, this means the money is meant to be invested for the next 20 years plus. But what I often see when clients first come to me is that their work RSP account is invested with the same risk tolerance and the same investment holdings as their TFSA. That is supposed to be for their short to mid-term goals. So they're basically investing their money the exact same way for their dream vacation that's in 5 years and for their retirement that's in 25 years. This is a surefire way to end up with a smaller bank account at retirement. But you might be wondering, doesn't investing aggressively mean that I could lose a lot of my money? Well, the first thing to understand here is investing aggressively doesn't mean that you're buying into penny stocks or crypto or investments that are highly volatile. In fact, this is a common misconception because betting on something that is high risk means you're actually speculating, which is not the same thing as investing. What we mean by investing aggressively is to hold a majority of your portfolio in equities that are well researched, high quality stocks, ETFs, or mutual funds, while maintaining a good diversification geographically and across the sectors. Because this is how you can know with confidence that your portfolio will grow consistently over time with a higher average return over the long run. So if you're saving for a long-term goal, then investing more aggressively can make a lot of sense as long as you're comfortable with the risks and the short-term fluctuations that come with it. As always though, before you start logging into your investment account and making changes, be sure to review your risk tolerance and do your own thorough research, or consult with a financial planner that can give you some guidance, because everyone's situation is unique in its own way. Now, the sixth thing you need to know is the Employee Stock Purchase Plan, or ESPP for short. This type of plan is where you get the option to buy your company shares at a discounted price, and it's often through your payroll deductions. So the money gets directly taken out from your paycheck to purchase the company shares. How much of a discount depends on your employer, and is often between 5 to 15% off the fair market value. This is another great way to grow your wealth with little to no risk, but only when you're selling the shares right away when you acquire them. Let me explain. You probably heard of the saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. What it means in the investment world is that you shouldn't hold more than 10 to 20% of your portfolio in a single stock, because that would mean you're over concentrated. So when you're holding onto the shares without selling them, and you're continuing to buy more and more of those shares over time, any big drops in your company's shares could have a significant impact on your net worth, because it's not uncommon to see clients with more than 50% of their company's stock, especially for those working in the tech industry. So instead, what you should do is diversify. Diversify by selling your shares and reinvest that money into other investments, and be strategic about the maximum amount you should be holding in your company stock. And even if you really like your company stock, it is still a good idea to consider selling it right away because of the tax saving opportunities. When you sell your shares right away after acquiring them, you incur little to no capital gains tax. And now with the cash on hand, you can consider contributing into your RSPs to get additional tax deductions for more tax refunds, or you can contribute into your TFSA for the tax-free growth and the flexibility to withdraw anytime tax-free. But regardless whether or not you're holding on to it or you're selling it, acquiring the shares will trigger taxes, because the discount you receive will become an employment benefit on your T4, and it's going to be taxed as regular income. For example, an employee buys company shares at a discount for $9,000 when the share's market value is $10,000. Then the taxable benefit would be $1,000. And if you're in the 38% tax bracket, then this would equal to $380 in taxes. And going forward, the adjusted cost base of the shares that you hold on to would be $10,000 for the capital gains calculation when you eventually sell those shares. The seventh thing you need to know is stock options. This is when the employer gives the employees the right to purchase a set of company shares at a set price. The predetermined price is also called the exercise price or the grant price, and the options may come with a vesting schedule as well. The great thing about this is that there's no tax consequence when you're granted the stock options. And since the exercise price is fixed, you can decide whether or not to buy the company shares depending on the company's stock price at the time. So for example, if the stock price is down, then you can choose not to buy the shares. But the hope is that you can exercise the option when the stock price is up. So you can still buy it at the set price that was below market price. This way you can sell the shares right away after purchasing and cash out on the profit. Now there's two types of stock options in Canada that you should know, because there's a different tax treatment for each. The first one is eligible stock options. Just like the ESPP, when you buy shares by exercising the option, that's when tax is triggered. And the difference between the fair market value of the shares and the exercise price is going to be the taxable employment benefit. With stock options, you may also be eligible for 50% stock option deduction when certain conditions are met. And your employer should calculate this for you and report it on your T4. For example, an employee exercises their stock option to purchase stocks for $9,000 when the fair market value is $10,000. So the taxable benefit here would be $1,000. And if you're eligible for the 50% stock option deduction, then the taxable benefit will be cut in half, so it will only be $500. This equates to $191 in taxes if you're in the 38% tax bracket. When you sell the shares, any appreciation that happened after you acquired them will be subject to capital gains tax. So as mentioned before, it might be a better idea to sell the shares right away so you can minimize the taxes and reinvest it for better tax efficiency. The second type of stock option is the CCPC stock options. CCPC stands for Canadian Controlled Private Corporation. So if you're working in a Canadian startup or a private tech company in Canada, then this might be the stock option you'll be offered. And this means that you can acquire the company's shares that are not traded on the public stock exchange. With this type of stock option, you can also get the 50% stock option deduction. But there will be an additional requirement where you have to have held the shares for at least 2 years. But the best part about this type of stock option is that there is a tax deferral benefit where the taxable benefit isn't going to be taxed in the year that you acquire those shares. Instead, the tax is going to be triggered when you eventually sell those private shares. So there's more tax planning opportunities available here since you can control the timing of when the tax is triggered. Number 8 is restricted stock units. These are basically deferred bonuses in the form of company shares. So your employer is promising to pay you a certain amount of company shares over time with a vesting schedule. Now, this doesn't cost you anything to get those shares, but the catch is you don't own the shares until they're vested. And when the shares are vested, it will trigger taxes as well. And for restricted stock units, the tax treatment is not as favorable compared to stock options. The value of the shares that you receive will be an employment benefit that is reported on your T4 and is taxed as regular income. So if you receive shares with fair market value of $10,000, then $10,000 will be your taxable benefit. And this means $3,829 in taxes, assuming you're in the 38% tax bracket. Any gains on the shares thereafter will be subject to capital gains tax. So consider selling them right away, like I mentioned before, when they vest, for diversification and tax planning opportunities. And lastly is the defined benefit pension, or DB pensions for short. This is a plan that promises to pay you a specific and predictable amount of monthly retirement income for life. It's often considered the best type of pension because the retirement income you receive is guaranteed. These pensions are usually only offered if you're working in the public sector. And how it works is you contribute into the plan through payroll deductions, and your employer will also contribute into the plan as well. The money you contribute is going to be tax deductible, so it can help you save taxes each year. And you won't be taxed until you start receiving the retirement benefit, which is then taxed as regular income. One thing that is often overlooked here is that there will be a pension adjustment amount that will reduce your RSP contribution room. So be careful not to over-contribute into your RSPs when you have a DP pension. The amount you receive will be based on a formula that considers your earnings, your years of pensionable service, and also your age. Typically, the earliest age you can retire with these type of pension is 55 years old, with at least 30 years of pensionable service. And before you begin receiving any payments, most pension plans will provide you with options for survivor payments to determine how much your spouse can continue to receive after you pass away, at the cost of a reduced amount for your pension amount. With DB pensions, the investment management side of things are much simpler because it's going to be managed by your employer. So you don't get to choose what's being invested inside, and your employer is going to be responsible for ensuring that there's enough money for the payouts. But what happens if you leave your employer before reaching retirement age? Well, then you're given two options. You can either leave your pension as it is inside the plan, or you can take the commuted value and transfer a lump sum amount to an external locked-in retirement account, or LIRA for short. The LIRA is basically an account that locks in the money inside until you withdraw it after converting it into a retirement income account. When you start receiving the retirement income, it is taxed as regular income, but it is eligible for pension splitting. So you can split up to half of the pension amount to your spouse, so both of you can each claim the pension income tax credit for additional tax savings. If you're currently in a DB pension plan, be be sure to check out a video here by my colleague Jackie on DB pensions and the things you need to watch out for to not lose out on retirement money. With so many different accounts and the subtle differences between each of them, it's not an easy task to figure out which one you should prioritize first to get ahead in your specific situation, because general advice on the internet just won't cut it. Click here to get a better idea on whether TFSA, RSP, or FHSA is the best account for you.